public good means a lot of different things to different people. So does public good mean social impact? Does public good mean racial equity? Does public good mean transferring what is happening on the ground and changing systemic issues? Or does public good mean simply creating partnerships? And even as we have this discussion, it's going to be important for us to define what public good actually is, because the traditional relationships between our community and the private sector has varied as much as the private sector institutions themselves. And so many of you, like I, have grown tired of relationships that the sum total is a company sponsoring a lunch or a dinner, but not being actively involved in the community where people who can't afford that lunch or dinner actually live. Or partnerships that are just an opportunity for corporations to navigate a crisis moment where they don't want to lose market share of customers from our community, but they don't want to make shifts in infrastructure or investment that actually transition what the relationship looks like and how our communities get better. But there are organizations and institutions that are doing substantive work. And that substantive work sometimes is not in the public space. Sometimes you see it. And the companies that are represented on this panel today are just a few of the organizations that are partnering with our community in substantive ways. What I love about them is none of them are saying that they are the best practice. None of them are saying they do it better than anybody else, and none of them are saying that they're perfect. What they are saying is that they're willing to look at creative ways of creating partnerships to impact public good, to push racial equity, to transition systemic issues, to make market-driven solutions an opportunity for some of the issues that are plaguing our community. And these are the kind of conversations that we need to have, because we should create a litmus for our partnership with the private sector that says this is the bare minimum of what should happen at the end of these relationships in order for us to work with you at all, in order for us to provide insight. And so we're going to be looking for you all to participate in this to some degree, but I'm excited to have the panel that we have. Mastercard has been a great partner of the National Action Network for quite some time, and working in our communities in some serious ways that they will talk about. And they're represented today by Nichole, who's the Vice President of Public Policy and U.S. Markets. You can clap. To her left is Sekou, he's the Managing Director and Head of Advancing Black Pathways at JPMorgan Chase. To his left is Janaye Ingram, who many of you know as one of the great leaders here at National Action Network, but she is now the Director of National Partnerships for Airbnb. And last but certainly not least is Chanelle. She's the Director of Strategic Outreach and External Partnerships for a small company called Google. And so Nichole, as the sponsor of this panel, is somebody that has not only worked with NAM, but many organizations in our community. Many of you may not know that Mastercard is a tech company and that deals heavily in data. And I'd love for you to dive into how Mastercard has been using data to partner with communities around expanding how we use technology to purchase, how you're partnering with store owners and merchants to be able to have greater access to fintech solutions, and how that data is creating opportunities to expand not only wealth but opportunity in many of our communities.
We need another card. We got another data card.
On behalf of our CEO, and our General Counsel, Tim Murphy, we are delighted to be here. Mastercard is a tech company, as Jeff mentioned, and we have 14,000 employees across the world. We process transactions. How many of you all have a Mastercard here in the audience? Thank you so much. And so, you know, oftentimes we don't necessarily know what that means. And what that means is we are the entity that communicates between our bank, the merchant's bank, to verify who we are, who we say we are, what we're buying, how much we're spending, and that the transaction is processed safely and securely. It's an evolutionary process. You know, we had the mag stripe on the back, and now we have the chip on the front, and now we have partnerships with companies like Apple and spur economic growth. And so when you have companies that want to insert themselves into different neighborhoods, mayors and developers can actually see this data and show where there's a lack of economic growth. When merchants actually go into these neighborhoods and then you see the transition, you can see that jobs are created, you can see that other stores end up coming into neighborhoods, but we also have to make sure that we preserve those neighborhoods. You can see that crime rates go down, and that's the sort of work that we're doing. We are blessed and fortunate to be these roles, and we have to make sure that we are a voice for our community, for other communities, because otherwise we're not making the best use of our time. And so I'm fortunate to know Jeffrey Beers and our colleagues here with other companies. We've worked together for a long time, and we're all where we're supposed to be so that we can represent the voiceless. And we have to do that because it's the right thing to do.
Thank you so much. Sekou, I want to read this quote to you. Making the economy work for more people is not only a moral obligation, it's a business imperative. And that was a quote from your chairman and CEO, Jamie Dimon. But what's interesting to me is I love when we start moving beyond the moral imperative to start talking about the business case, because then even racists sometimes get it. And at least one of y'all thought that was funny. So when we're able to do that, we're able to actually push the ball further down the field, even with those who seemed as unlikely allies. What I'm interested in, however, is this has been an interesting trajectory at JPMorgan Chase. And you all, I won't say you started, but you had something called Advancing Black Leaders. And Advancing Black Leaders was an opportunity to expand how you engaged our community and how you invested in the community. How did that project kind of create lessons that led you to some of the work that you're doing right now around advancing Black pathways?
Thank you. I guess I became the super president of channeling the moment with everyone up here. No, it's a great question, and I feel like for us, being in the seats that we have, you can actually have a direct impact on the Black community. So advancing Black leaders, as we looked around our firm, corporate America, there weren't enough Blacks in senior positions. And so what you said is, what leadership said is, to really do this right, we need to focus on someone who's day in day focused on how do you recruit, attract, retain most talented people. And with that, we have director success. So in 3 years, we have more senior Black managing directors than any firm on the planet. So again, when you focus on this stuff, you can do it. And so what does that mean for my role? So as Advancing Black Pathways, I just like even saying the name of my job. Advancing Black Pathways. That's what I'm the head of, and that takes a step further. Because Advancing Black Leaders was about hiring people internally. This is about changing the economic foundation of the Black community. We're going to do it through education, career, and wealth. So I can get into the specifics later, but hiring, investing in Black businesses, investing in the community. You have to really be intentional, and I'll tell you why it's important. The talent is created equally. It's the opportunity that's not. And so we want to provide paths for opportunity. And as I look at opportunity, the last thing I'll say, if Blacks had the same business ownership as white Americans, it would result in 9 million more jobs and 300 billion more in worker income. This is about opportunity.
Absolutely. Well, in fact, Policy Bridge, I think, recently did a study that showed that if we began to focus on racial equity, that in 2015 alone, there would have been $2.5 trillion more into the economy. And so that's not just talking about Black wealth, but talking about when Black folks make more money, the economy does better. In many cases, Janaye, that is kind of how Airbnb is looking at this ecosystem. Clearly, it's not just about how we get Black folks to be on Airbnb and open their homes. But there's something that happens when homes are open and ecosystems are created. What's been kind of the thinking around that, but more importantly, what's been the methodology in how you all have gone from thought to practice in making that real?
So good morning, Dan family. It's good to be back with you all. So that's a great question, and I think so much of what Nichole and Sekou have said sort of ties ties into, I think, why we're all up here talking about this very topic. For Airbnb, which is a home sharing and entrepreneurship platform, for those, how many of you in here, before I even go further, don't know what Airbnb is? And it's okay if you don't. Okay, we have some folks who have no idea what Airbnb is. So I'll take a moment and tell you a little bit more about Airbnb. So Airbnb is a home sharing platform. It started as a home sharing platform, and so we started 10 years ago, allowing people to share their homes, having open space, or sharing a room, renting out their whole home on our platform. In 2016, we created what we call experiences, which are an entrepreneurship platform, if you will, for people to monetize their skills and talents. So if you are someone who likes to make hats or likes to make jewelry, you can monetize that skill by putting it on Airbnb and allowing people who are traveling or people who are staying in your local community to be able to experience what you're good at. And so that's a whole new part of our platform. And so basically, through home sharing, the home sharing piece is the part that's most advanced. It's the thing that I think most people know us for. We're still learning and getting known for experiences. But through the home sharing piece, that's something that we know takes tourism outside of the traditional tourist zones. So if you're someone who lives here in New York City, you know that most of the hotels are going to be in Midtown. You're going to find a few downtown, but most of them are going to be in Midtown. I used to live in Harlem. And in Harlem, when I lived in Harlem, there were no hotels in Harlem. And now I think you have one or two. But if you're someone who wants to go to Harlem and you want to stay in Harlem, what are your options if you don't stay in one of those two hotels? You could stay on Airbnb. You can stay with an Airbnb host. And so that's really what our company is. It's about taking people outside of the tourist zones, because that's where they're going to spend all of their money. It's the reason Times Square has so many restaurants and so many businesses. Because people, oh wow, okay. That woke me up. I'm going to move it back a little bit. Because we know that the businesses that are around the tourist zones are also going to be thriving. And so for us, what we see is the hosts make money. So if you're someone who's hosting your home or your spare bedroom on Airbnb and you put it up for $100 a night, you keep $97. Airbnb only takes 3%. So that money is your money that can then be used for retirement, can be used for college funds, can be used to help pay for your home itself. But not only are you seeing that benefit, but the community around you is seeing the benefit. So the coffee shop down the street that's owned by the woman that you know who you go to church with, you can send people there and they'll go and they'll spend their money there, and that helps the overall community. And so it's this multiplier effect that we see happening in communities across the country, not just here in New York, but really throughout the world. But what that means for Black communities and Black families is that we now get to have part of those tourism dollars. So often, our communities have been neglected, have been ignored. People will come, and again, I'm gonna go back to Harlem. People will come and they'll spend a couple of hours on a tour bus, they'll sit in a church service, and then they will come back down to Midtown. Am I lying? And so now what that means is, instead of having those people come in and observe for a moment, they get to really be part of the community. They get to experience what it's like to live in Harlem, or to live in the Bronx, or to live in Brooklyn. And they get to really be a part of that community by supporting those local businesses and engaging in the activities that the locals do.
So let me ask you before I have, please, it's all right to clap. It's all right to clap. Before I bring Chanelle in, part of investment is building community, building relationship. And part of that is also building trust. And many of these companies, even when they hire Black folks, hire wrong Black folks who have zero cultural competency or currency. And so they get the wrong Black folks to partner with. And it's just the wrong Black partnership and the wrong Black investment and the wrong Black outcome. So I'm curious, especially with the number of people that raise their hand about not knowing what Airbnb was, how do you deal with the kind of cultural norms of Black folks who are like, I don't want some people I know staying in my house, let alone having strangers.
Exactly.
And so that's the specific, but the bigger picture is how do you deal with the cultural realities of creating a partnership with a community that is so often very different from the normative culture of your normal Airbnb providers?
Yeah, no, that's a really important question, and it's the reason why we have partnerships with organizations like NAM or like the NAACP. We have a partnership that we launched in 2017 with the NAACP, and we've been so far into 5 different cities, taking this message of home sharing to communities of color, really targeting our communities to say, this is an opportunity for you. You can leverage it or you can get left behind. And what I don't want to see happen, and the reason why I chose to come to Airbnb after leaving NAN was because of this economic opportunity. The fact that there are people who are making a lot of money off of home sharing. And I want that to be us. I want our community to get those benefits. You know, so often, as you said, everyone who's our color is not our comic. And so it is important that we have these conversations. I have been at the last 3 conventions talking about Airbnb, and will continue to be at the conventions. We'll continue to work with the chapter leaders across the country. You know, I've spoken to Reverend Toulis in LA, and I've spoken to so many of the leaders who are around the country talking about this very idea of how do we ensure that our people are getting this. And the other thing that I think is really important, when we talk about home sharing, so often in the Black community, we forget the history of home sharing that we have in our community. We started home sharing. Before anybody else even knew what it was called, we started home sharing. You know, all the way back to when we first came to this country. When somebody came to a plantation, where do you think they stayed? They didn't stay with people they knew, they stayed with strangers, because they were new. And then you talk about Jim Crow. When we were traveling, oftentimes we would have to stay with each other. We would have to stay with somebody's cousin who we never met, but they would welcome us into our home. And so our history is linked with home sharing. This is not anything new to us. It's something that we need to be reminded of. And we have other partnerships and other programs that help people sort of, if they need home improvements, to get a home improvement loan, because we know that that's a reality as well. And they get it for, you know, a fixed rate or a low rate. We just are about to launch some pilots in cities across the country doing just that. And so for me, my job and the thing that I love doing is having this conversation with our community and people like you who can go not just think about home sharing for yourself, and maybe home sharing is not right. You can think about the entrepreneurship angle through our experiences, but really bring this economic opportunity to communities.
Thank you so much. So Google's been making some broad investments, and I think some interesting ones. One, a place that I'd like for you to start, because there's some nuances to what others have talked about so far, is this real investment in people and leadership. And so with Next Gen, you, in many cases, your brainchild, began to bring together Black and Latino and other people of color leaders in sectors that impacted not only their business but yours. Can you talk about, now several years in, how that human capital investment and partnership has translated into mutually beneficial investment, and how, and if at all, how that has expanded what the company is willing to do as a result of that test case that you allow them to see through real relationships?
How's everyone doing today? It's good to be here. Like Janaye, I come from the civil rights movement. I had the opportunity to lead the policy office of the National Assembly before stopping at the FCC, and working for the first woman and the only white woman to serve as the FCC commissioner before coming to Google. As a result of that journey, I was extremely motivated when I had the opportunity to come to Google to kind of put all of that work together. Who was in the conversation with Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez talking about climate change. I remember when the climate change movement began, and we were trying to figure out how to make this relevant for communities of color. And part of the conversation was people of color are focused on justice issues that impact the day-to-day lives of ourselves and our community. And that connection had not been built before the environmental justice movement was developed. As soon as those dots were connected, we were all over it. And that was what was my passion coming to Google, was to do the same in tech policy. As you heard Jeff say that Nichole's company is a tech company, every company is or will be a tech company. Every school is or will be a tech school. And like Janaye, I was fascinated by the opportunity to be on the frontiers of this economic change and opportunities for our communities. So I started the Google Next Gen Policy Leaders Program to try to do that same thing for tech policy. As you know right now, there are a lot of conversations that seem extremely complicated, and sometimes they are, but often they really aren't, about the ways in which tech is going to impact and is impacting our daily lives. And it is absolutely critical that as people of color, we have people in the room who can go toe-to-toe with decision makers in order to make sure that our interests are protected and that we are not at the back of opportunity, as Janaye was talking about, but that we're actually on the cutting edge. And part of that is uplifting the voices of people who are already doing that work. So the Google Next Gen Policy Leaders is an experiment. We have a kind of a motto of launch and innovate at Google. We start it, see if it's working, and keep tweaking from there. And I wanted to do the same thing. So we made a big bet here in New York. We brought 100 leaders from the Black, Latinx, Asian American, Pacific Islander, and Native American indigenous communities in the United States together to try to talk about, let's connect what you're bringing, whether you're the owner of a tech startup, whether you are a leader of a civil rights organization, for example. Ebony Riley, you might know that name. She won a pretty big award this week. Is one of our Google Next Gen policy leaders. Whether you are in a justice organization that's not necessarily focused on tech, bringing all of these different types of people together. We have creators, people who are leveraging the online ecosystem to make their living, and say, how do we bring you to the table? I'll just say a few things that we've seen that have been different. When I first arrived at our company, we would have conversations with executives around critical issues of tech policy. The room was as diverse as folks tend to think about when they think about Silicon Valley. That has changed. That has changed. Next Gen leaders are always in the meetings. They are calling in. They are coming out to Silicon Valley. They are showing up at all of our sessions and events. We had an event called AI for Social Good last year, where we brought people out to the Valley to actually see the ways that artificial intelligence is making a difference. Next Gen leaders were there. They've been putting in applications to do work on this. We are supporting them. One of our Next Gen leaders actually has a startup that his goal is for it to be a competitor to Google. I think that's great. So I think that I can go on and on about the types of exciting things that we're starting to see happen. But this is an investment that is generating a lot of excitement across the country, the company.
Well, and please, as you think through that, again, I mentioned Google is making investments in all different kind of places, and there's so many varying divisions. But one I think is important is as you look at Google Ventures and the investment that they recently made in Blavity Inc. How are those, do you think those kind of investments are going to be more and more the order of the day? And as folks in this audience that are trying to figure out where's the money, where is it going, and what's the ROI, how are those kind of investments the kind of things that this community should be paying attention to, so as they support where Google is investing, Google also sees the ROI and begins to invest more?
Yeah, I mean, one thing that's exciting to note is Morgan Devon, who's a founder of Lobby, is a Google Next Gen policy leader. Part of what Morgan has done and the team at Lobby is exactly the way Google and many of our large companies think about investments, which is she went for the big bet, right? She has the largest network of Black millennials, period. So she also launched an innovative. If you talk to Morgan, she is constantly thinking business, and she's constantly taking scale. So even as she's grown her business from the newsletter to bringing on multimedia content platforms to now she's kind of got her additional ventures where she's doing beauty and hair care products. All of these things, she looked at how do I get it as massively expanded as possible, and scale and impact is what we're really looking for. So one of the things, I would say two things about lessons learned from that investment, the type of investments we're making. One, we're looking for innovative leaders who are not afraid to make the big risk to have the big results. So that's one. The second is that, again, innovative solutions. So a lot of what people think about when they come to partner with companies, I think this is probably true for all my colleagues, is I need a check. And that's important. But if you really want to get people excited, think about what are the other things that that company brings to the table. So I'll just give one example. Has anyone heard of Dr. Phil Goff and the Center for Policing Equity? It's a really powerful work that he's been doing for a long time. He's a data scientist who took on the issue of that there's not any comprehensive data about police-involved encounters. He was laboring along doing this with his team in an analog way where he would work with any jurisdiction that was willing to give him the data and had a beautiful set of data analysis that would allow him to create some very important learnings about that. He partnered with Google. They kind of got some Google data scientists in the room, some Center for Policing Equity scientists in the room, and what they ended up with was, yes, a significant grant, but also a team of Google engineers that were deployed to the Center for Policing Equity for a couple of months to help him build a machine learning system that was able to take everything that he said used to take him almost a year to do and do it in minutes, which means that now the Center for Policing Equity can take data from any jurisdiction that's willing to provide it and look at the overlays of how this is impacted by race, class, socioeconomic status, the policies of the police department. So that's kind of that green moment where you see the money and the particular unique resources that a company brings having an impact.
Thank you so much. So, Nichole and Sekou, I'd like for you to take this question, because again, in the beginning, we talked about what is public good. How does it translate? Does it translate into solving systemic issues, whether it's the wealth gap or education or poverty? Does it deal with racial equity in a real way? What is it? What I'm interested in knowing, especially for those in the room, is how do your companies assess what the public good is to the degree that you can share? And then as you're talking about what that public good is, how should those of us that are activists, that are organizers, that are elected officials be thinking about how to frame public good as we target partnerships and investments with companies like yours?
So for me, to clarify, that we're operating in communities, we need to invest in those communities. So the public good is investing in the people and investing in the community. So if you talk about education, one of the things we're doing from Advancing Black Pathways is we're committing to hiring 4,000 Black students over 5 years. That's the public good because it's providing people a pathway and understanding the art of the possible. So as we look at where the need is, so the public good, it should be mutually beneficial. By providing opportunity for Black students, we're providing opportunities for us to have the best employees. Right? By investing in Black communities, you're creating greater progress for America as a whole. So it's a shared venture, meaning that by doing the right thing and supporting communities, you're building stronger communities, you're building stronger customers. So for us, it should be part of your normal business, right? And not cherry picking, oh, we're going to be here, we're not going to do that. And that's why, one thing I'm fortunate, I worked for Chanelle, who's the CEO of Chase. The largest bank in this country is run by a Black woman. The largest bank in this country. So we can be intentional about going into Black communities and expanding. So as you think about, and we've announced all this market expansion, by knowing and saying, I'm going to go into low to moderate income areas, I'm going to think differently as we launched in DC and then North 7. What we did in Detroit, investing $50 million to help the progress and turn around Detroit. You can be intentional. So the public good is really doing the right thing, in my view. By doing the right thing, they create greater opportunities for all.
And for us at Mastercard, public good means the words financially included. Half of African American households are underserved. That means that our households are unbanked or underbanked. We either don't have a bank account or we have one and we're still not able to meet our needs. And so we will not rest until we feel and see and know that all families have access to electronic payments. That doesn't necessarily mean that you have to have a bank account, but that means you have to be able to have some sort of ability to make payments. If you try to buy, if you try to use an Uber now, you have to have a what? A card, right? In some establishments, if you want to go buy a salad, you have to have a card. If you want to go to a baseball game in some ballparks now, you have to have a card. And so our answer to a lot of these legislative proposals against that is until people are financially included and we get rid of this economic insecurity that we are all grappling with, then we can't rest. And that means, putting $500 million into a think tank at Mastercard called the Center for Inclusive Growth. We are partnering with organizations like PolicyLink, the Joint Center for Political and Economic Studies, and we're studying what the challenges are. Now, you and I can say, we don't need to do a study to know what our challenges are in the community, right? But we do need the data to see where are the pockets of people who are unbanked or underbanked, and what are some of those solutions? Globally, we can look at Africa and see that there are some people who don't have IDs, and they don't have a bank account. They store their money under mattresses, just like some of our grandparents and others do here. But over there, we're able to work with governments to create an ID and a card on the back of that ID, working with a bank. And here, the challenges are a bit different. Some communities don't have access to a bank on their corner, right? You have access to a payday lender, but you don't have access to a bank. And so those are the sorts of issues that we are grappling with. We're looking at the future of work. Chanelle talked about Google, and Janaye talked about technology. Technology is great, right? But not if we're left behind. Not if our children don't have the STEM education so that they know how to code. Our children know how to go onto YouTube Kids, but do they know how to do arithmetic, right? And so until we are in these schools training kids about financial literacy, until we reform what college looks like so that our students are able to graduate with actual jobs, we can't rest. And so we're doing a lot to partner with universities, with Microsoft, with Google, with Airbnb, Lyft, Uber, others, Chase, so that we're working together to achieve the real impact that our communities need.
I just have to give one shout out after we give her a hand clap for that. Speaking of financial health, because we launched this, and I'll say Google it to give you a shout out. But with Essence Magazine, we just launched Currency Conversations as an effort to reach 20,000 black women around financial health. So if you go to Essence website, we'll have tools, we'll have millennial financial experts, but the focus is really not about opening new accounts, but about thinking about financials. Like we say, keep it 100 in our community, we need to say keep it 700 in your credit score. So we need to change this whole dialogue about what we value and what we understand and having access to the tools. And that's what this effort is, to get 20,000 black women access to talking about financial health, financial literacy, because black women are the CFO of most of the families, right? And so if black women aren't financially healthy, our families aren't financially healthy.
Right. We're working with Uber and Lyft with gig economy workers. Does anyone know what that means? When you go out and take an Uber, that's an entrepreneur. And that Uber driver makes 4 or 5 hours, and then he or she may go and tutor some children or be a home health aide. And so we're working with and other companies to make sure that when that Uber driver or Lyft driver wants to get paid, they don't have to wait a week to get paid. They can get paid right away through a service called Mastercard Send. And we're looking at ways to streamline what that means, because more and more we're seeing that people have multiple jobs, which means they need to get paid quickly, right? So the bills can get paid, and that's why we use our technology and we use our data scientists to develop what we need.
So let me ask a sensitive question, because I know that this does not happen at NAM. Again, I'm saying this does not happen at NAM. But at other organizations, often the partnerships with companies like yours only come from the national office. And sometimes the national office doesn't have the best ideas and don't have the innovation. But it's folks on the ground who have innovative ideas that they know create immediate solutions in the marketplaces that they're in. So if there are folks in this room that have market-driven solutions, that have win-win partnership ideas, Janaye and Lord have mercy, Chanelle, thank you very much. Can you talk a little bit about how you would recommend kind of navigating the hugeness of getting with multinational corporations potential ideas that they actually may be willing to partner with folks on the ground to do?
Yeah, so that's a really good point. For us as a company that really is focused on community and really understands that what happens here in New York is very different than what happens in LA and very different than what happens in Miami or Wichita, Kansas, right? All of those communities are very unique. They have their own set of challenges. They have their own set of opportunities. There are reasons why people might want to go to New York over Wichita, and there are reasons why people might want to go to Wichita over New York. And so we have local teams who focus on what's happening in the ground in certain states. We actually have a team here based in New York. They focus on New York, they focus on New Jersey, they focus on Connecticut. And I don't know if Sanaa is here. If she is, can you raise your hand? She may not be here, but basically we have people who think about not just the partnerships, but the policy, but how we engage with community in the local market. Because the way that I might see it from a 30,000-foot view is very different than someone who lives in the community and who's part of that community, who understands the local politics in a way that I might not necessarily know or am not keeping my attention on because I just don't live in that community, for instance. And so I think there are a lot of ways that people, and I know many of the people here are from New York and or have traveled here from other cities, but we have local teams who think about the unique perspective that a community might have and can work with you to develop those solutions. For example, there's a partner that nationally we used to work with and we no longer work with for a whole host of reasons. And it's an organization that does great work, but we found from a national perspective it wasn't giving us the return that we needed for the partnership that we had. That said, locally here in New York, they've partnered with the local branch of that national organization. And the reason that they've done that is because locally here in New York, what that organization's local sort of market can do is something very different than what they're able to do on a national scale. And so I think for us, it's been a benefit to have that level of flexibility where our local team can work with the local team or the local chapter of an organization like Meeks or like some of the other partners that we have.
So I think Janaye did a great job of summarizing our approach where, in many cases, I kind of laugh at it because, of course, coming from an organization with a lot of affiliates, nationals, we're the big guys, and then the affiliates we are sub-branding to, but many times with our company, it's the reverse. Where there is that regional, state and local impact is where there will be, in many cases, even larger partnerships than with the national office. And so I would just say in terms of thinking through how you navigate that to your question, Jeff, this is my opinion. But one of the challenges that I see as someone who receives probably all of us receive a good 50 to 100 emails any given day with people with extremely thoughtful, no doubt impactful STEM programs that they're running in their local community, and we just know we're not able to get involved. Part of it is trying to figure out how we can kind of collaborate and come together, again, because you want to be able to have that maximum impact. And so while the National Action Network, the National Urban League, and NAACP affiliate is going to occur in most cases to our folks on the ground, come together to make that a little bit easier. But again, our folks who are on the ground doing the regional and state investments are very much looking for that kind of combination, like I mentioned before. Innovative ideas, innovative approaches, and the ability to have significant impact.
I want to add something because I think that what Chanelle said is really important. And having led NAN for years, having come out of fundraising development in my career prior to NAN, I know that for organizations, and whether you're thinking about how can your NAN chapter become affiliated with one of these companies, or whether you're with some other organization, the thing, to Chanelle's point, is that sometimes it can be hard to break through, especially if you're an organization that doesn't have the name recognition. Or sometimes it's, if the company is giving to the national organization, and I think this was also tied into Jeff's question, it's harder for the local to find those resources. I think it's a little bit different again with Airbnb because we have these local offices and we're part of our company that's focused on the local. But I will say, if you're an organization that doesn't have the name recognition, the money is important, but the relationship is more important because the relationship gives you the opportunity to demonstrate what your organization is doing and the work that you're doing and the value that you can bring any of these companies and companies that aren't even here. And so while you may be coming with an ask that has a dollar amount attached to it, don't let the conversation end if the answer on the dollar amount is no. Because essentially then you are closing off the opportunity to demonstrate what you can do. So I know it's hard when you're trying to raise money, but ultimately you want to build those relationships and be able to demonstrate all the capabilities that your organization has.
And I'll just add one little quick point to that because I'd be remiss if I didn't. We do offer free tools. That's what Google does, right? So if you have not ever visited grow.google.com, I encourage you to do it for two reasons. One, as Janaye said, there's an opportunity to sign up as a partner and to be getting information about where you will be in your community and the types of things that we're doing, but also because you're able to see all of the tools that are available for free for you and your community, and definitely having kind of taken advantage of that, seeing what's relevant, not relevant. If you can come and say, look, this is something that is making a difference, I'm using this is the missing piece, and I can tell you how to fill that piece, that's a much more compelling way to approach a conversation. So I just encourage you to take that, go visit that site, you'll get a lot of value out of it, but again, it's also an opportunity to build that relationship.
So really quickly, because I don't believe that these panels make sense unless you're able to ask questions with more than 2 minutes left. So what I'd love for you to do is begin to form a line in this center aisle if you have a question. I will come down with a mic and provide you with the rules for asking a question before you do so. Thank you, sis. I appreciate it. I need some exercise. But what I'd like to ask is this, because when we talk about investment in communities, often the community very seldom knows the depth of what any company is doing. And in an activist consumer marketplace, where the wrong commercial or the wrong statement by a CEO or CMO can lead to calls for a boycott, how do activists and citizens fish through to know what's real and what's not? And so, for instance, everybody knows about what happened with the former CEO of Papa John's. He was an idiot and a lunatic and decided he wanted to share with the world that he was an idiot and a lunatic. The question with a company like that is, when does the consumer know when they can have trust again? So they removed him from the board, they removed him from his position, they put policy in place to say he couldn't buy any more stock, which I've never seen a publicly traded company do before. They then give $500,000 to Bennett College, they create a foundation, and they give several other $100,000s to organizations that impact the community, and then they bring Shaq onto the board to shift governance. Now, most folks were like, oh, you're just trying to buy us and you think we like Shaq. All of us have known companies that have made similar mistakes and never changed governance,
Right.
and still don't have a black person on their board, that have not written a check to any HBCU. And so how do, in you all's opinion, and this is of course just you all's opinion, what's the right way for us to assess what steps a company takes to know that the investment that they're making is worthy of our trust and building relationship?
It's a simple philosophy for me. You'll know a tree by the fruit it bears. And so if you look at the work that people are doing, it shouldn't be typically in reaction. So if you look at, for instance, our firm, Jamie Dimon, CEO, he publishes a shareholder letter, but details what investment we're making in community. It should be always in response, uh-oh, we're in trouble. What black group can I give some money to? That is not the response. It should be, you should see people's actions on a daily basis on how they're investing in community. It's just that simple, right? Because talk is cheap, right? But what are you doing? And in these seats, it's about what you're doing. I could talk to you all day, but if my actions don't line up, I don't keep a job, right? And so that's a great measure, and that should hold for every CEO, every executive, period. So I'm very clear on that. Actions need to follow the words.
So $1.3 trillion are spent in our community. We spend $1.3 trillion every year. And so where we spend our money matters. And what we need to do is look at the corporation. Look at the corporate board. Does it reflect us? Look at the C-suite, at the top. Who's the CEO? Who's the vice president? Who's this, that, and the other? Does it reflect us? Look at the business practices. Do we demand that? And that's why partnerships with NAN and National Urban League and others, we all work together to make sure. And again, we are in these roles to hold our colleagues accountable for that. Otherwise, we are wasting space. So whether we have to look at whether our companies reflect us. That's the answer.
So let me do this, and Janaye, please, by all means, I'll give the instructions right now. We've got 7 people in line, and we've got 30 minutes before time, if they give us the amount of time we actually had before we were late. So that's what I'm working off of. The rules for this session is, the first rule is ask a question. The second is ask a question. The third rule is ask a question. We know how smart y'all are. And so what we would love for you to do is set your question up in 30 seconds. If you take longer than 30 seconds to set up the question, I will ask you to ask a question. I'm not going to say ask. Come on, brother, we still family. I will ask you to ask the question. Last but not least is, thank you. Last but not least is, if you have someone that you would like to direct the question to, please do so. And then don't hold the mic because you're talking about me.
Hi, my name is Maisha Boyd, and my question can be directed toward anyone. A lot of what I'm a grad student at NYU, so a lot of the classes that I take are around measuring success. So I just want to know what tools your companies or organizations are doing once you have that data to measure success and continue those partnerships.
Great question.
So we put together benchmarks. We believe in metrics. And so, at the end of each year, we look at all of our partnerships and we forecast, who we're going to partnership with each year and what we'd like to see out of that relationship. Not just whether we purchased a table or whether we hosted a panel at the conference, but what impact have we made? Whether it's a policy impact, whether it's a marketing impact, what sort of revenue we made. And that's the way that we do it. At the end of the year, we reevaluate whether we've done that.
My question is this. It's very good that you are giving jobs to students, but what about their parents who are also looking for work? And a lot of times, what educational programs do you have so that they can also become eligible for what your company is looking for?
I think you're touching on a key point, and that bigger point is, as jobs evolve in technology and automation, how do you prepare communities for skills? One thing we do, we just announced a $350 million commitment to help communities reskill. And so, to your point, as you look at community colleges or colleges in general, are people teaching, the coursework or providing background to prepare students for the job of the future? And for the parents, people in communities, how is the workforce shifting and what are companies doing so they can have that inclusive growth? One thing we're doing now, working with someone who's building a tech hub in south side of Chicago, and what they're going to do is provide data entry training for the local residents and people in the community college, and what we're going to do is partner with them so we can hire the same people who will get these certifications. So you have to be intentional about all of this stuff. So in terms of, again, we can't solve, world peace, but we have to be very clear, where are the opportunities, and then match that up with how we're suited to actually make impact.
Sekou, as a follow-up to her question, especially for folks in the room, how do you vet? Because there's a ton of organizations in here that would like to partner, but what's the litmus that makes them eligible to be able to partner in that kind of situation? I'm sure it will help across the board.
Yeah, so the great thing about this role, again, we announced in February, clarity is our friend, because there's so much you want to do, but if you try to boil the ocean and have 10,000 organizations, there's not a lot that we're going to get done. So we have to be very clear on what our priorities are. And for us, I looked at what cities do we have strong Black populations? What's the unemployment rate? What's the education rate? How many small businesses? And what's our JPMorgan Chase footprint? How can I leverage our scale? So, there's states where I'm sure there's great opportunities to partner, but if I can't leverage the scale that we have as a company, then I'm less effective. And so we look specifically on what's in our footprint where we can actually leverage our resources. So are we in the community? Because then you have feet on the ground and you could bring people in, whether it's the branch, to talk about how to start a business, what you should think about, how to retrain if it's partnering with local partners. So it's really who's aligned with our mission. And for my job, but from our corporate responsibility more broadly, it's the same thing. They have 4 pillars. They're looking at work, growth, small business ownership, financial health. So what partners are aligned with their key priorities? And so my advice would be, if you're an organization, look at JPMorgan, Mastercard, whoever, look at, if it's corporate responsibility, where are they focused, right? Because if you say, I want to focus on education, but they focus on, tech development or launching new businesses, you don't have that match, you have a mismatch. So you're more effective where, and someone said it earlier, where you can see where there's that need, and how your either idea, solution, or organization functions within that need. It could be recruiting, it could be, so whatever it is, that's the metric for me. Aligning what you do and your strength with where the corporation is focused.
Chanelle, you're going to make a comment.
Just very briefly, in response to the woman's question, I wanted to share 2 things. One is an example of something we've done specifically when you're talking about skilling adults is our IT search investment. We worked with Coursera, which is an online learning platform, to provide a training that you can take to help you get a credential that says that you can provide IT support at a company. This is important because these jobs, on average, are between $55,000 and $65,000 salary. When you complete the program, you have the ability to apply to a consortium of employers who agree to recognize that completion. We are seeing that the majority of the people who are completing that program are people of color and women. So that's the type of opportunity that I suggest folks look for.
Chanelle, cost of the program and how long is it?
Free, and I believe it is we have a program that, a scholarship. I don't actually remember, it's like 12 weeks, something like that. I'll find that. The other thing I just really want to quickly mention is websites. A lot of entrepreneurial spirit in our community, not a lot of great websites. If you don't have a mobile-friendly website, you don't come up in search results on people's phones. How do most people of color access the internet? You can go to get my business online, and there are tools that will walk you through getting your business a website so that people can find you. You can get access to tools to help you practice, try out ads to see what works for you. And you can learn more, again, grow.google.com, go to Get Your Business Online, and go to YouTube and search for videos on Grow with Google, and you'll see some pretty inspiring stories about people like you.
Thank you so much.
Yes, we went from students to parents on the outside. What do you guys, or have you guys even thought about parents on the inside. Because you have a lot of incarcerated fathers who turn their life around on the inside and want to come out, but there's so many stumbling blocks, there's so many stresses when they do get out. I'm an ex-offender, 2 of my sons follow me to prison. Okay, so I know about the stresses that are in place once we get out. If you guys can possibly touch on some of the equity or some program that you can partner with that will help men before they get out to come see you, that will alleviate a lot of the problems.
So we're taking
And sisters.
Well, yeah, brothers and sisters, I'm glad you brought up this point, because we're actually looking at re-entry, so hiring formerly incarcerated, people. Why? Because obviously the criminal justice system has disproportionately affected us, and so, but at the same time, it's interesting, legislation and regulation has been what's hurt us from hiring. So we've worked with FDIC, but we actually have a program where we're calling it re-entry, so hiring formerly incarcerated people. So again, it's one of the things that we should be looking at, because people need that second chance and need that pathway. Otherwise, what more can you do? If you, to your point, you said you're trying to make the effort, but if the opportunity's not there, that's what limits people. And so that is something we're doing as a firm.
Sekou, he's bringing you a car.
Bring a car, yeah.
Good afternoon. Well, I'd like to find out the question, the cost of investment into the community. As far as the security, do we have to sell our soul to technology? How much do we have to give up? And how do you guys manage when it crosses the line? Because as soon as you sign up for it, you just track us, follow us, go to sleep with us. I mean, how do you balance that and keep us safe?
So we believe in using data for good, which means that, there are legislative policies out there now. They're in Europe, they're in California. We're going to see probably some federal legislation that focuses a lot on how companies use data. But our data is anonymized, so we don't know who the person is making, spending or using their card. We just use the data in an aggregate. And so that's what we believe in. We are compliant with the laws, and you'll see more and more as you go to these websites that you have to get, they have to get your consent. And so in Europe, we have to keep a database of people who want to opt out of certain things, and that's what we're doing.
I'll also encourage everyone to take advantage of the tools that exist to allow you to be empowered around your privacy in your experience online or with various companies. We have something called My Privacy Checkup that will allow you to go through, and you can choose not to have your searching tracked for the purposes of advertising. And in fact, if you're not signed into the browser when you're searching, it won't be doing it anyway. You have more control than you think, but part of the issue is there's a lot of education that we need to do about our privacy. For example, many of us know that we have a privacy agreement with our cell phone provider. But do you know that there's a separate privacy agreement that you're making with every single app you have on your phone? If you don't, and you have control over many of those settings on your phone, you need to walk through it. National Consumers League has a pretty good set of resources that might be worth checking out. Things like making sure you have two-factor authentication, that you use security keys when you have them. There are lots of ways to make your experience with data much more within your control, and I urge you to take control.
Let me ask you all this, because I think this question is bigger than one of data, right? It's who's monitoring these relationships. And in a private company, your primary responsibility is to shareholders. But I think, Sekou, you made a point about the quality of your relationship is a telltale sign. So I'm curious, who manages the relationship on the community side? And who are you talking to ensure that the relationship is actually in the best interest of the community, not just you saying so?
So yeah, I think that's a really important question. For us, Airbnb wants to be a different type of company. And so you mentioned sort of the shareholders being the primary focus. We're still a private company, so we are not yet public. But our CEO announced last year that he didn't want to just focus on shareholders. And that is somewhat a revolutionary idea because most companies only want to focus on the shareholders. He's been calling it the 21st century company model. And basically it does focus on community. And community is one of 5 stakeholder groups. And that's not just the community of users, that's the community of users, but it's also the community outside of the user group. So the people in the actual communities where we are. In terms of the user community, we have inclusive business pillars that are responsible for responding to community, ensuring that the data is not necessarily being left for anyone to be able to hack into. I mean, there's a whole host of companies and teams, businesses within the company, and teams that are focused on ensuring that the data is not just left to anyone's use. We have an anti-discrimination product team whose job it is to focus on discrimination, and this is just an example. And so there are certain things that only that team can tap into. No other engineering team or data science team or data team can actually even see the data that that team is working on. And so by doing things like that, it really ensures that people's data is not just left for anyone within a company to have access to. It really is monitored. And I think for a lot of tech companies, there is increased scrutiny around data privacy, around who owns the data. We've seen data breaches, and that oftentimes someone else's data breach, oftentimes for a tech company, can be an internal check to say, have we made sure that we've done X, Y, and Z so that we don't become the next company that has that data breach. And so I think it's taken much more seriously.
Thank you so much.
Okay, so my question might be a little odd. When you're talking about income into our communities, in my city where I'm from New Jersey, Trenton, we are forming a credit union for our community. So how can we build together with your companies to make sure that that stays strong and functional?
So I would say, you should speak to that too, but when you form your credit union, make sure that you align or join the credit union association so that then you're part of a collective of credit unions and that your voice is heard. And if it's an African American, so you'll be at the table, right? Or you should be at the table when you become part of it, or you create your own association and work with us. I'm happy to give you my card afterwards.
Hi, I think it should be scary. A couple of years ago, in 2017, I graduated with my master's in computer sciences. Today, I work for an insurance company doing recruiting because I have not been able to find a job getting into the IT field. Like I said, I have my master's in computer science.
Give me your card.
We'll talk. Okay. And I was just wondering, because it's not just me. I know there are many other people that I went to school with that graduated a few years ago and are still looking for work in the IT field. So what would you suggest for recent graduates who have come into the work field now and cannot get a job in the IT field?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Short story. Yes. CSF words.
But for the other people in the room,
Okay. Yes.
yes.
Well, again, this goes back to our effort that you referenced, advancing Black leaders. And so we created a process that we went through to understand, who are African Americans within the tech industry, et cetera. So we actually created this data book. But again, look at the different companies. I think have that clarity on, where the opportunity is, where your background aligns with what they're doing. Because in my general experience, like the less you rely on people to connect the dots. So if you send the resume and it's not clear, even though you have a master's in information science or technology, but it's not clear where you fit in the spectrum, I would never outsource someone else to kind of connect the dots for me. So it's just having that clarity on how your experience matches what that particular need is. And so for me, that's one of the critical things when you story then people get it, right? And so that's how I would look at that. But we're all happy to take your information.
Thank you. Thank you for that question.
Hello, my name is Justin Jimenez, and this is somewhat important question, and it's specifically directed to the gentleman in Chase. Well, I am a shareholder of Chase, so I'm a big fan of the company. However, I did bring a friendly civil suit against Chase regarding a certain
I don't want to keep my job. Go ahead.
No, I'm sure you're fine. Your whole presence alone means that we are making progress. But I did have a problem with the Junius firm, which happens to be entirely white, and as someone who is a colored minority gentleman, I did find it to be troubling. And I was wondering, yes, has your organization with Chase made any attempts to bring more diversity to this Junius firm? And if not, what would your program in particular be doing to help bring more people of color in terms of upper management and investors at that firm?
Great question. And Sekou, as you answer that, if any of you want to answer, how are you pushing diversity in your partners and third-party suppliers? Because I think that's the question that he's talking about as well, not just specifically Chase.
Yeah, so I don't know the particular item you're talking about, but I will comment on two things. Supplier diversity is one thing we're focused on, because as I look again at what we're going to do around Black-owned businesses, by powering up diverse suppliers. So if you're a supplier to Walmart, Target, whatever company, and you're able to get capital to buy more, whether it's materials, et cetera, that means you grow. It means you actually hiring more people in the community. So for us, supplier diversity is one of the areas under advancing Black pathways I'm focused on. I'm unapologetically focused on the Black community, but as a firm, we do something in all communities. So my focus is only the Black community, but the great thing about this is it's scalable. So anything we do can be used in all communities. So at the end of the day, our firm is focused on Latinx, LGBTQ, veterans, and so we have that focus. As you look at we can always do better. So I will say, that's true. In companies, all of us up here, the companies will make mistakes. So what I say is, evaluate people on how they respond to mistakes. Do they just sprinkle some money with a Black organization, or do they really make different change? So if you look at our organization, like I said, a Black woman runs the largest bank in this country. I don't know how else to answer that. So again, diversity is real. You should see it. You should talk. We have Black board of directors. Melanie Hudson, who Aerial Investments, so a phenomenal person. James Bell. So again, you should see it. So my words should basically match up when you go through the reports. That's how you bring it together. I can pontificate all I want and say, we have this and that, but if you look and you don't see it, then it's not real.
Thank you. Thanks for the question.
Can I just say something quickly before I go to the next question, and that is that for the tech sector in particular, our set of companies are still pretty new, the so-called tech sector, in addition to all the computing tech companies. And so I do think that there's a tremendous opportunity for education for our companies about what it looks like to show up in community. And I know it's no secret that we all need to do better, and we all know that we need to do better, especially many of the large companies. I'm seeing lots of things that I find encouraging, but one thing I actually wanted to bring up earlier, and I just wanted to quickly mention is, to Janae's point about relationship, there are actually lots of Black and brown Googlers now. If you know one, I would encourage them to get involved. One of the things that I've been really trying to talk to Googlers about, they know that they're passionate, they want to get involved in the community, but getting them to be a member of your chapter or to join your board, there are a lot of resources that you, a Black engineer who's passionate about the community can offer in terms of helping you to get your website presence and things like that together, and they're in a position to donate. So I just encourage all of us to work together also during this opportunity to, our company is very much a culture of ground up as opposed to top down in terms of the way that we learn things. So those individual interactions you have with people of color in our companies make a difference.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Beverly. Apropos of what you're saying, Ms. Hardy, what are you doing to bring senior citizens into this new age? It's really kind of embarrassing, demeaning to have to consult them to help us as seniors use some of this technology. What can you do to help seniors come with your new age?
So I think that is a great point, and I want to think about, I'm sure that, let me say this, I'm sure there's some really, really innovative things happening that are not coming to my mind immediately, but I'll say a couple of things that I think are important to keep in mind, and that is that no matter what your age is, technology is moving so quickly that you are never going to feel that you're conversant, unless you're like the babies, right? They can do everything. And so I think part of it is just getting over the fear and actually walking through some things. So I will say one of the partnerships we announced last week was a commitment to invest in computer science training. It was for young people, but part of what we did there, and this is why I raise it, is the curriculum already exists. It's already been proven and tested, it's evidence-based, and everyone can access it online. Why did we invest several $1 million in organizations, community-based organizations, to run this program? Because they know how best to serve the people in the community who are going to access that program, and we know they'll have much more success than we will. So part of it is getting access to programming through your local organizations. The other thing that I would say is, some of the tools, you don't need them yet, that we have are actually making a difference for people who want to do things like age in place, right? So like Google Assistant, we're having a conversation about autonomous vehicles right now. That's very important. A lot of these technologies are things that make a difference in terms of allowing people to aid with dignity. So I think there are things that are relevant in terms of quality of life, as well as just thinking about how the tools are as intimidating.
So thank you. I want to get these last 4 questions in all at one time and then allow you all to answer them in your closing remarks.
Hi, my name is Joanne Codrington. I used to work at Chase many years ago. And so my question would be for you, Sekou and Nichole. What I find, I have a college student son, and what I find, and my daughter's getting ready to go to college as well, what I find is that we get a lot of mailing, they get a lot of mailing in their email, whether it's by mail, getting these kids information about applying for credit cards. But they don't have the tools to understand that when you get a credit card, it doesn't mean to go to Macy's and Bloomingdale's and get the latest, and then the people that are actually responsible are the parents. So what are you guys doing to teach these college students the importance of having a credit card, how to utilize it, why they need it, other than here's a card that you can go shopping?
Pause. I'll get these last. Now, brother, you know you were supposed to get in line. I had closed it out already. Don't do that to me.
Mine's very quick. I got Google.com, but do the rest of you have some email or a website where we can find out more information about the things that we said today?
We'll give those in the closing remarks. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Matt Benson. I'm from Baltimore, Maryland. I know dozens of people who have what seem to be functional business ideas, one of which is investing in commercial real estate. I think most of us remember Nipsey Hussle for investing in his community. There's a movement to buy back the block where you grew up and hire people who look like you. In Baltimore, which isn't cheap. In Baltimore, we have a myriad of needs. How can people with great ideas who may not have advanced tech skills, ideal credit scores, or monetary resources gain the requisite skills to help them qualify to get access to capital? And forgive me if you already answered this.
Thank you so much. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Ken Radcliffe, I work with Melvin in the program, the Isaiah Project, working with addressing double-digit unemployment, especially black men and women returning back to the community. It's a real community, and I just like to hear your thoughts.
Thank you so much.
So I'll quickly take, I think it was a great question about financial health. So as part of Advancing Black Pathways, we were just at Howard where we just did a financial health session for about 250 students. We've created a curriculum and we're actually digitizing that curriculum, but we have an actual plan where we're doing it at Morehouse and Spelman as well. We're working with Paul Quinn College. So we actually have an entire engagement plan where we want to reach 100,000 people, and we have a student goal as well. So we are in Black colleges. I actually did my launch last month at Howard University. So we're looking to hire from Black colleges. We're looking to help professors prepare students for the jobs of the future, and we're looking for all of our interns. Any intern, Black intern that comes to JPMorgan, you're going to go through financial help. You're going to understand your 401k, even though you may not be investing in it, but maybe you go talk to your mom and dad and say, hey, mom and dad, are you maximizing your 401k? So it's part of what we do when you talk about financial health, because if you don't get that right, you can't get the rest of it right. It's not about what you make, it's about what you keep. And we see that example too often. People make a lot of money, but at the end, they end up with nothing. So we're focused on that absolutely. I would also say go to Advancing Black Pathways, just Google it. If your kids are going to school, we've just created a program hiring right next week. Actually got about 400 students. We're putting them through training, sophomores in college. 33 Black colleges represented. So just go to our website. We're very serious about this, and everyone that comes out of that program will have an opportunity to intern this summer. And separately, because we're investing in Black businesses, we're going to have these interns spend time with Black businesses. Do 2 weeks working with Black businesses to understand entrepreneurship. So all of this is on the website if you go to our website. But if you have kids who are interested, please, we're happy to get them.
So let me close out this way. Each of you has been involved in this work at multiple stages for a long time and are seeing some real innovation and shifts. What I'd love to share with this audience is what are the things you're most excited about on the horizon as it relates to corporate investment and how it creates impact, and where these folks can plug in a way that they can either play or at the very least make sure they have the information so they know what's going on. And Chanelle, we'll start with you and then end with Nichole.
I want to take some time to think about what am I most excited about. But I think what I would say is pretty much in line with what I think my thread as I've been talking. Right now, it's very easy. I get it. I'm a sci-fi fan, so I definitely, there's all kinds of scary stories about how tech is going to destroy the world, right? We love them. The thing that is not as easily accessible are all stories about the way that tech is making a difference for the learner. One of my favorite examples is Issa Rae. When she first had her idea for a show, she could not get anyone to give her a platform. She started making up her videos on YouTube. She built a fan page on Facebook. She raised money with crowdsourcing, and then she was able to prove that she had a significant audience to watch her show, and now we all know how big of a success she's become. So I think that technology is a piece, it's a tool that makes a difference for our communities. And to the extent that we are able to, I think there's a huge hunger in our sector to identify people who are able to take those tools and use them in positive ways, and that's where the investment is flowing. So again, my example of our AI for social good, I'm very excited about this set of investments we made. It's an impact challenge. We'll be making announcements soon about the first set of folks who have put in requests. They have come from all across the spectrum of civil and human rights work, business work, and individuals who are able to use machine learning to really address some societal problems, I think are going to be big winners in terms of investments. And I'll just go again to Janaye's point about the Green Book and how we used to be, we were the first people doing home sharing. And the same is true whether you're talking about Uber and getting each other lists. I mean, all of these things are in our blood as a community. And so if we can just take advantage of this moment in time, there will be real opportunities. So I would say just follow us to see the types of investments we're doing. Google.org is our foundation's website, and that's how you can learn about some of the philanthropic commitments we're making in particular.
So for me, I think I am most excited about our experiences. I know I sort of gave a high-level view of what that looks like. But for me, I think entrepreneurship is something that our community really relies on. Whether we know it or not, so many people are entrepreneurs. So whether you are the person who makes takes on the weekend to help patch your income, or whether you're just making jewelry on the side because you enjoy doing it, really being able to leverage that into a full-scale business is something that I'm excited about. And we've seen people who have experiences on our platform who are grossing six figures just by doing this thing that they love, doing it on the side, but being able to put it on a platform where millions of people will see that experience as they're traveling. And sometimes even as you're not traveling, if you're staying in your community. Here in New York, there are experiences that are live right now that people can participate in. We also have social impact experiences where if you have a nonprofit, you can take all of the money that you would earn from those experiences and put it back into your organization. So that's something that I'm really excited about. I think that there's an opportunity for people to start their business. We've seen it happen where someone doesn't have enough capital to actually start the business that they want to start. And so they come on to Airbnb.com, that's our website, Airbnb.com, and they start their business that way, and then they become a thriving entrepreneur. And so I really see entrepreneurship as a way to unlocking so much financial freedom, and I think if people are interested in that, and or the home sharing piece, again, you can go to Airbnb.com.
I'm excited that, again, I work for the best bank, highest in the country, and that my day-to-day job is focusing on the Black community. That I have a team that when I wake up, I'm thinking about the Black community. When I go to sleep, I'm thinking about what difference I made that day. And I'm also excited that if I do my job well, it'll change lives and the wealth dynamic for our culture and our race. But more importantly, that I'll have competition. I want competition. I don't want to be the only one who's focused on the Black community. So if I show that there's opportunity here, that there will be advancing Black pathways or deepen focus on the Black community everywhere. So that's why I'm excited.
I'm excited that we are doing work in three key areas. One is education, that we're educating young people and those who are transitioning from having jobs into transitioning to these jobs that are requiring so much technology. I'm excited about the work we're doing there. I'm excited about the innovation. I'm excited about the products that we're developing so that we don't have to keep that notebook with all those passwords in them, trying to remember them all at once. And I'm also excited about the preparation that we're doing to prepare our workforce for the future. And I'm just really glad that I am where I am so that I can be a voice for our community.
So let me say this very quickly. I think that there's a tremendous opportunity, but that opportunity in many cases is most challenging for our community. Why do I say that? Because companies like these are changing the metrics for what their partnerships with communities look like. And whether it is the private sector, whether they're publicly traded or private companies, or even philanthropy. The Cleveland Foundation is the largest civic foundation in the world. 75% of their program managers have now been trained in investment because they recognize that programs don't change communities. And so what that means for us is we have to change how we engage these companies, what we view as a litmus for a valuable partnership. And it means some of us are going to have to say no to the dinner so we can change destinies, and no to the lunch so we can provide an institutional legacy, and no to a conference so we actually create change versus just talking about change. And that's challenging for a lot of us because it's not what we've come from. And so my challenge to you is to begin to think creatively about how you partner with the private sector, coming up with innovative ideas, and also figuring out where you fit in their already existing investments. Because that's how you begin to create opportunity and money to flow through your organizations and use your brilliance to create impact for them. And so this was a really challenging panel to come after a bunch of presidential candidates. But I want to say thank you to Mastercard. I want to say thank you to Reverend Al for making sure this was on the agenda. And thank you so much to Chanelle, to Janaye, to Sekou, and to Nichole for lending their voice. I know a bunch of you have your hands up. I'm not taking any more questions because we are at time and I end on time. And so thank you so much for you all's participation and enjoy the rest of the conference. you all please know that Dan has a tech center, so if you are in the community, please access Dan's tech center.